Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. It's a wrap for the cyclocross season and we will be closing the curtains as well, discussing the X2O in Sint Niklaas, the X2O Trophy in Brussels and the Sluitingsprijs in Oostmalle. The road season has already kicked off as well with a couple of star performances by cyclocross riders, so we'll be analysing that as well in the second half of this podcast. With me here to do that is Issam. Issam, thank you for being here. It's my understanding you've been pretty sick this week, and that is why we couldn't record last week. How are you doing now?
Well, I cannot complain, to be honest. I'm doing better than I was doing in the entirety of the week, to be honest. I think the start of the weekend, I'm feeling a little bit better, so all good, all by all. And indeed, it was my fault that we didn't record last week, but we are now here in full force, so let's tackle the podcast.
Well, luckily it's not the most important time of the season. I mean, a lot of riders have already called it a day, resting, tired, just all the factors that you can name, already on the road, already on the mountain bike. It's normal, so in a sense it's good that it happened now and not during the week of the World Championships. That would have been a very bitter pill. Let's start with the first of the three races we'll cover, the X2O in Sint Niklaas. The men's race. Michael van Toerenhout got a gap in the first lap already. Elisabeth dropped that gap, and van Toerenhout from there pretty much, well, I wouldn't say cruised because he had to work for it, but was able to take the victory pretty comfortably. Behind that was a bigger battle for second place. Wieseuren was in that battle together with Elisabeth, Lars van der Haar, Niels van der Putten, Toon van der Bos was there for a while, and the returning Toon Aerts. In the final lap, Elisabeth, how else could it have ended, took that second place. The 1-2 farming season for Paul Saus is truly on. Van der Haar sprinted to third place. It's, as I said, farming season for Paul Saus. This is their moment to farm some nice 1-2s to put in their stat kit, which they can send to sponsors next year. I mean, Bingle is going to need to be replaced, I think, after next season. There's some weird stuff going on with that rule about no betting sponsors in Belgium, but I mean, they can stat pad now, and it's not really weird because Elisabeth, super consistent, Van Toerenhout back in form. These are just two of the best full-time cyclocross riders there are.
Yeah, currently, definitely that is the case. And maybe there were some talks after Middelkerke where we saw Van Toerenhout that was a little annoyed by the way Elisabeth was racing. So, yeah, we saw an Elisabeth that was trying to help his teammate out, and he did a great job in that regard. And yeah, I think in the end, clearly you can see that those two, from what is left, in a way, they are the strongest, and there is not really someone that is able to get in their way. They are the ones that get in the way of the riders, and they can kind of almost decide who wins it. And they really played it perfectly there, the team tactics in Sint Niklaas.
Good execution, and you said some annoyance in Middelkerke between the two. There was a bit more of a kink in the cable between the two in Brussels a day later. I mean, they continued their 1-2 farming, but this time when Van Toerenhout was bridging the gap because Elisabeth was in the lead with Nieuwenhuis, Elisabeth shouted to the staff alongside the course that Van Toerenhout should not pace, but later on, that was cleared out in the interview. Elisabeth said, well, obviously I'm only seeing glances on the Jumbotron, so I didn't know he was alone, and once he was there, we played it well. So it all seems professional, and maybe we're just all hungry for a bit of spice, because the races were, well, I mean, especially Brussels was not bad, but Sint Niklaas definitely was not that entertaining. Van Toerenhout just at the front alone for an hour. Fast course, very fast course. I think the average speed was something like 29 kilometers per hour. Not many corners. It was almost like a road race. And I mean, Benidorm gets criticized for being so fast, but Sint Niklaas here in that regard was not much better. A couple of notes. I talked about full-time cyclocross riders. Pim Ronhaar wasn't there. He was sick, ended his season therefore in Lille. In the pre-ride of Sint Niklaas, Jens Adams, another full-time cyclocross rider, crashed on the metal barrier there was, where they jump over and then you land on the tarmac. It's always pretty risky, but Adams, he landed too much on his front wheel and then fell forward, broke his collarbone, was taken by ambulance, but eventually it was not too complicated, his collarbone injury. And luckily for him, his contract with Athletes for Hope has been extended with 1 season. Somebody who's come into a bit of form here in the final part of the season. Well, I can't really talk about form. Somebody who's regressed less than the rest in this final part of the season, Lars van der Haar. He sprinted to a 3rd place in Sint Niklaas. In Oostmalle today, he was in contention for the win, sprinted to 2nd place there. And I do want to ask you a question about van der Haar. Not necessarily these results, because they don't mean too much to a rider of the caliber of van der Haar. But van der Haar this season, it's been alright. He's been up there, but there's a couple of other riders banging on the door. Do you think that we will see van der Haar make a step again? And that we can see him fight with the full-time cross riders, with Ron Haar, with Nijs, with Nieuwenhuis? Or have we slowly seen the final decline of van der Haar set in? That really last year was his last season, really, really up there and fighting for the big victories.
It's hard to say. I think that you might be looking into a season where he can, where he has to be more careful choosing his races and make sure that you just be a little bit smarter with the choices, also with your standings and stuff. And I think that van der Haar has the experience to do that, and to be honest, already kind of did this season. I don't expect really an improvement from what we have seen, and as you said, probably that season was, that's probably not going to be topped in terms of form and the way he was racing overall. I think that this season was definitely, from his perspective and his eye, was very solid. A very good season in my eyes, but you cannot stop it in a career, especially at the age where he is, and probably the later parts of his career. It's getting closer and closer to an end for him, I feel, and as a professional for sure, and at the level that he wants to be. So I feel that next year it's hard to say what is going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see somewhat similar results, and maybe a somewhat even smarter approach in terms of really choosing your races, knowing which ones will be better for you, and be very hard in those decisions also.
Ticking clock, age, van der Haar, racing age this year, 33. Time doesn't wait for anybody. I do still find it a bit weird what happened to him this season, because in the beginning of the season he was up there. He won that race in Maasmechelen. He was really good on the Koppenberg. I think he could have won that race. Then at Europeans he was good. He could have become European champion, but he messed up his start. He crashed too many times. And then after that it just slowly went downhill. Is this because he maybe did too many races? He needs to choose more? Well, he already made a bunch of choices. So I'm thinking maybe there's been a bit of an illness or something that happened that really impacted the second half of his season. It's obviously going to be difficult, but I believe in at least one more year of van der Haar fighting it out there up front. And I mean, what his role in the team will be, that's going to be up for debate with Nijs, Ron Haar and Nieuwenhuis. It's obviously going to be super difficult to be the leader he was before, but I don't think he has a problem when he isn't that anymore. In Sint Niklaas, he outsprinted Toon Aerts, and we have to talk about him in some of the comeback kid, Toon Aerts. He's been out 2 years. He tested positive for letrozole in 2022. I'll ask for your opinion in a bit, but I'll go first. I personally don't have anything against him coming back. The rules are the rules. They are in place. They said that Toon Aerts had a non-intended doping violation, whatever that means, but this is the procedure they came up with. I'm all for giving people chances to return to the sport, so I'm not against it, but I do have serious question marks around his story, because he tested positive at the end of the 2022 season, and it took super long to solve everything. In the meanwhile, his contract with Baloise Trek got terminated mutually, but I think they really just wanted him out. And they gave a press conference. I remember it very well. It was the day after Diegem 2021 or 2022 Diegem, and I had been up editing the podcast till 1:30. Woke up the next morning, all press gathered. Toon Aerts gives a press conference. Hair is long, and they build their defense against the case. They say it's unfair. Toon Aerts' system is wrong. Toon Aerts is innocent. We've tested an open container. Open container of his supplement shows it's contaminated. Hair samples show that the letrozole has been in his body longer. He's just unlucky. We can't find a closed container which has letrozole in it, which immediately gives me alarm bells. Like, if your open container is contaminated, but you test like 10, 15 closed containers and they're all clean, that's weird. Like, okay, sure, something can be wrong, but this is where you build your case on. They built their case on this. The media was on their side. Nobody asked a single tough question. And then all of a sudden, I'm cycling in Limburg this year. I get a push notification. Sari Bossite, same management as Toon Aerts, test positive for letrozole as well. All of a sudden, this container supplement story goes out of the bin. No, it wasn't the container, even though that was apparently contaminated. He was in Flamanville and he ate dairy products there. And then they came with some far-fetched conspiracy about cows there getting hormones and that prevents the cows from getting their period, but it does mean that there is a possibility of letrozole coming in their milk or whatever they do with the milk. And Aerts was there and he must have ate it before the World Cup. It just doesn't add up with their story, because they've been telling me, oh, letrozole is super rare, you hardly ever find it in anything. And all of a sudden I need to believe that he had a contaminated container because the open container was contaminated. But he also ate contaminated dairy products in Flamanville because his teammate tested, or his management mate tested positive there later. Like, it doesn't add up. And if there's then one critical column coming out and that gets removed within 3 hours, it just doesn't make sense to me. I get frustrated about that. That just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I don't have anything against Aerts, and I think it's good that he comes back, and all that was nice to see.
No, I think I have a similar stance, to be honest. I mean, it's he got the 2 years. There were no earlier issues in terms of any previous doping use or something like that. So I think that the 2 years were fair. He was not able to defend himself in such a way that he could prove that he didn't use it intentionally. I think that the UCI, or at least the doping authority, had said something in the lines of that it is visible that he didn't use it with intent of using it, and that it was just there. And I feel that, as you said, the press definitely had a responsibility, in my opinion, to question him a little bit harder. I feel that they gave him an easy route, is maybe something not really well placed, because obviously he had the 2 years, and that's, I would imagine, a very difficult situation for a rider, especially if you believe in your innocence. But it is a weird story in a way, especially the way they changed stories a couple of times, and in the end, you know, to see him come back in a way as if he's some sort of a hero is, for me, a little difficult to look at, and not only by the fans, because I can definitely understand that they had to wait for 2 years to see their favorite rider come back, which I totally understand, but more so the media, the way they saw his return as a sort of a, I don't know, it was a bit crazy to see in a way how they dealt with it, but I can understand it. He took such a stance, and it was very quickly that the media chose his side of the story. As you said, he did the 2 years, so I don't think that we have to talk about it too much. It is a weird story in the end, and I hope that it doesn't happen again, because it would damage the sport and himself definitely even more. And, you know, mentally a rider can go through a lot, but that would be, I think, a little bit too much for a rider. So yeah, I just hope that he can stay away from it and don't get into some trouble.
Yeah, it was nice to see so many fans get out for his return, especially for a race like Sint Niklaas, which is normally pretty dead in terms of spectators. I think there were like 5 touring car buses that came, and they were making music and stuff, so that was nice to see. But yeah, as you say, the comeback became a bit of a circus, and it just bothers me that 0 critical questions were asked, because the story just doesn't add up. There was one critical opinion piece written in the biggest paper at Last News, or it was only in their web version, that got deleted like within hours. That was it. There were no critical questions, when it doesn't add up. I just named a couple of things, but in their defense, they also used like the hair samples, which proved that the letrozole was already in his body longer, and that his test while having that in his body were negative, so it must have been something with the test. But then that again doesn't add up that he would have only gotten it in Flamanville, because he was in Flamanville like 3 weeks or something before the cyclocross, before the test. That was 2 weeks before the World Championships, 3 weeks before the positive test. Like, it just doesn't add up. And then to make such a show from it, and he's so much things have gone wrong, been done wrong to him. It's like, no, I don't really like it. I'll probably be blacklisted by his manager Prevost now, which is completely fine. I couldn't care less. I just wanted to put it out there so I can talk about the racing, because he had many fans in support. He needed to start on the last row, and the racing by Aerts was actually pretty good. He moved up fairly quickly. He was in the battle for the podium. You could definitely see he was still a bit rusty, which is normal if you haven't been racing in 2 years. I would be worried if he would be way further back, because he is in peak form here. The rest is tired. But I don't really have a reason to doubt why Aerts wouldn't be able to compete for victories next season. He was up there in Sint Niklaas, just missed the podium. In Brussels, he definitely had more issues, wasn't really in contention for the podium, but still got a good result. But then, in Oostmalle today, he crashed in one of the first laps and broke his nose and is concussed. So hopefully he's doing all right, because obviously that's something you wish to nobody. And again, I really don't have anything against Aerts. The story just didn't add up. But I have no reason to doubt that Aerts next season will be in contention for victories again.
Yeah, definitely, the talent hasn't gone away and the potential also not. It's just, the question kind of was he able to get himself through the 2 years in some physical condition? And was he able to keep on training while at that moment, for him especially, everything is kind of against you or feels against you? And I think that he did a good job in that regard. There are a lot of riders that are not able to do that, and that come back in way worse condition and have to build up again. And I feel that he, definitely tried to be there from the get-go, and he showed that. Big shame that in Oostmalle he had that crash, and it seems that it's not a pretty one, and he has to recover from that, obviously. But for next season, I feel that he is definitely one of the guys that can get himself in top fives, and victory is maybe something that could definitely happen on the courses that he likes a little bit more. The muddy courses, the courses that are super tough. But we have to wait and see, because obviously there are some younger riders that are also getting better, and with the age they will also mature a little bit more. So that will be interesting to see how he will be with those guys. And don't forget, it's the end of the season, so it looks a little bit better than it maybe would have been somewhere mid-season. So it's going to be interesting.
Then the women's race in Sint Niklaas, really not much to say. Conditions were good. Brandt attacked after like 2 or 4 minutes, and really, really easily took that victory. Second place went to Verdonschot, who had to fight a little bit against Worst, who ended third. Really, really not much to say there. It was a walkover, I would even dare to say, for Brandt. Again, as we expected, she would take a couple of W's here, a couple of wins, a couple of victories in the end of the season. It was good. And the same can't really be said for all the others there, but it was not really that relevant. It's the end of the season. And Brandt, where it was easy in Sint Niklaas, the next day in Brussels it was not easy. She had a lot of technical issues. The opposition was able to handle the muddy conditions in Brussels, completely different race circumstances there, a lot better. Especially the big off-camber, Brandt had some issues there in the first half of the race. She had issues in the grass section where she kept riding, even though she would have been faster off running. Just the line choices, the decisions to try and ride everything at any cost didn't really work out for her. She was chasing, and then she went back into the lead by her power, and then she made mistakes, and then Betsema took the lead. Betsema, master of that big off-camber, but faded in the second half of the race, and that really was the story. The first half of the race was who was able to adapt to these conditions the best, because they were different than in the pre-ride. Oh, okay. And then once everybody figured out what the good lines were, and mostly taken by Betsema, give credit where credit is due, they copied that, and from there on it just became who's the strongest, and that was Brandt, who took the win ahead of Ribeirol. I mean, Ribeirol was pretty strong, but had a weird dip in the penultimate lap, and eventually had to settle for second, with her teammate Bakker taking third. That was a pretty entertaining race, actually, some mainly due to the weather conditions there.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it's also a course that is quite tricky, and definitely not a course that you get in front of you as a rider many times this season in a season. So yeah, it was difficult to manage to get through it, and I think that, as you said, it was really a matter of trying to figure it out, and the moment it was figured out, it was kind of, we went back to the strength that we know from the riders, and the orders were kind of set at that point, and Brandt was able to secure victory. And I think that was it was in the end for Brandt, you can say that it was a bit of a shame this season that she had that collarbone injury and that she had to recover from it, and missed out on a part of the season, but recovered quite well, and was, in my opinion, definitely was able to make something out of this season, and it looked quite good. So hopefully, we can see something we can see some great things from Brandt on the road season, and also next year we can still see her compete at the front, because I think that she still has a couple of years in her.
Yeah, it's been a good second half of the season. I don't know. There's been some speculation. Is she the second best rider of the season? Silver medal at Worlds, second in the victory ranking. I would probably take Alvarado over her, because I don't attach that much value to these wins here. But nevertheless, it's been a good season. She moved to Belgium this season in the winter. I don't know if it's also for the summer, but she's moved to the Kempen so she can train more cross, and it seemingly worked out pretty well for her. It was a big decision for her to leave her hometown Dordrecht. So yeah, it's been a good season for her. Definitely good to see her come back from that broken wrist last year and broken collarbone in the beginning of this season. I would like to say that things look good for Ribeiro and Bakker, as I would expect on a course like this. Furthermore, Zemanova raced, but she had a tough weekend. I think somebody in her family died leading up to the weekend, but she still wanted to race to finish off the season, but things didn't go well. Doesn't matter that much. Anyway, it's really not something here that I draw any major conclusions to. Same for the men's race, where we had a leading trio. We already went over what happened between Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout. Nieuwhuis was up there. He was battling with them for the entire race, was mostly in the lead, and then got dropped in the penultimate lap when he made a mistake. Van Toerenhout made another mistake, then Iserbyt was gone for victory. Yeah, Issam, Nieuwhuis, technically maybe not the best race, but in my opinion, what more could he have done? On this course, the course in Brussels is a bit of a joke. It's like obstacle, technical here, off-camber here. It's a bit of a circus course, and what more can Nieuwhuis do? If he's not in the lead, he's 100% going to be team-tacted by Paul Sauze. So my opinion was his best shot. Just go all out and hope he drops them. Didn't work out. Doesn't matter. It was the final race of his season. C'est ça.
Yes, I think that it is in the end. There's not much he can do about it, and I feel that he is definitely very happy that the season has come to an end for him, because he didn't show up in the last weekend in Oostmalle. I think that for him it was, he kind of tried to make the best out of it with the form that he had in the end of the season. It looked quite good, but I think that for him the season is, it was just coming to an end, and he felt it. And he, in Brussels there was not much he could do, as you said, because if you would sit in the wheels, they would do the same thing that they did in Sint Niklaas and leave the gaps, and rightfully so. You have to make use of the numbers that you have at the front, and they would have done that. So he had to pace at the front and try to put them under pressure and hope for some cracks in their game. But it wasn't meant to be for him, and I think that the best was out of him at that point already in terms of his form. And I feel that if we can look back on his season, I definitely feel that you can say that it was a very strong season. There were some doubts in the beginning, the way he got himself through it, and definitely some of the races he showed himself that he was able to be the best of the rest behind Van der Poel. It's difficult to say, where you can place it, if Iserbyt is 100% and where if he could challenge him or not. But I definitely feel that it would be very close. If not, he would have been better. So I feel that he can be very proud of his season, and it's great that he made that decision to go full-time cyclocross, and it's going to be exciting to see him back next year.
Yeah, definitely, and it was pretty good all around this season, especially from November onwards. He really was the best full-timer over the entire season. Maybe we would say Iserbyt, but both have really had good seasons, and probably if you look over the course of the entire season, Nieuwenhuis, Van Toerenhout and Iserbyt were the three best full-time cyclocross riders. Yes, I do name Van Toerenhout. Yes, it's heavily influenced by that World Championships medal and European Championship title, but I do think that based on those performances, he deserves it. Also on the podium at the Belgian Championships, so he really did peak at the right moment and did stat pad a little bit or enough on the other sides of the season to be considered for me. But I do want to say Toon Aerts in 4th place. I already went over him a bit, but I would like to still, now we're talking about it, gave me the thought that he really did fight hard for it, and he struggled a lot technically, which is not weird in these conditions. Difficult course, difficult off cambers, difficult sections, weird sections around the place where people normally come to picnic. It's kind of a washboard up, washboard down. But he did what he could. He fought super hard. At some point he dropped to 6th, 7th, and then he rode back all the way to 4th and took that place, which is good. And I mean, there was quite some fighting going on. Van Toerenhout riding all the way to the line, eventually taking 3rd place in the X2O Trophy overall over Cam Mason, who ended 10th. Mason wrote on Twitter, X, I must say, that he really felt tired in the second half of the season, and he's going to try and figure that out for next year. But he's learned a couple of things. It's not weird. We can't forget that Mason, despite being a second-year U23, or second-year elite, sorry, he's not U23 anymore. He's never done a full cyclocross season like this, so I guess you win some, you lose some, and overall his feeling of the season will probably be, I don't know, will it be satisfied? He definitely has a couple of positives to take from it. He didn't do Oostmalle. Oostmalle wasn't broadcasted, so eventually it was broadcasted, but it wasn't announced. It was then on PlaySports, which is a paid channel we can't receive in the Netherlands. So just give you a brief summary. Men's race went down to a sprint. Niels van der Putten won, a very good ending for the season for him with 2 victories. Lars van der Haar was 2nd, Iserbyt 3rd. Brandt attacked in the final lap and won the women's race ahead of Laura Verdonschot with 3rd place there, going to Manon Bakker. Okay, Issam, then we go to the road, because that's starting. Apparently some so-called opening weekend took place here. Omloop het Nieuwsblad, Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne. No, I'm just kidding. It's always fun. I really love the Spring Classics. Probably my favorite part of the road cycling season. Always action-packed, and this year was no different. Let's start with the women, because we had a couple of star performers there in Omloop het Nieuwsblad. In the end, 4-woman group was fighting for the win. In that group, Marianne Vos and Shirin van Anrooy. Vos had surgery to one of her arteries going down to her legs. Those had become too narrow. That influenced her cross season last year. She then underwent surgery again. And it looks to have worked out super well, because not only did she win that race in the sprint, she was also able, following Lotte Kopecky on the Muur van Gerardsbergen and the Bosberg without any problems even.
Yeah, that was really cool to see, to be honest. I mean, it's a legend of the sport that is still racing. And it wasn't the easiest last couple of years. But she, managed to get through it, and it looked very good in the Omloop. And being able to follow Kopecky, there are not that many that are able to do so, especially on these type of climbs. And yeah, it looked very good overall. She was always up there, and she was able to position herself in the right positions. And also the way how she eventually got herself in the final, super strong. So it was from her side, super strong race, and I think the women's race was great to watch. We got kind of an elite group with some of the best riders that were of the start field that were able to get themselves there to the front. And when you have a course with the Muur and then the Bosberg, you always have exciting. Not always, but the racing can sometimes be very exciting, and it was great to watch how it ended up.
You can never write off Vos. I mean, I think almost everybody has made the mistake of some point saying, "Oh, Vos is done." I made the mistake myself the season before she came world champion in Fayetteville, even especially in cross. There, I said, "Oh, it's time to focus on the road, leave it to the youngsters in cross." And well, I could eat those words at the end of the season. That was not my proudest moment, but I feel like everybody has written off Vos at some point. But every time she manages to prove you wrong, she comes back every single time. It takes such mental toughness to do that, and you can only admire that. So I heard the positive reports from, the recovery is going better than expected. Maybe we'll do 1 or 2 cross races. I think it's a wise decision they didn't do that, but it looked good now, and hopefully it will make the women's races more entertaining, because last season we had a bunch of SD Works walkovers, 1-2s, 1-3s. It just wasn't that fun. But now with Vos, if they can't drop her on the climbs in Flanders, you have a very, very dangerous opponent with you. You can't just, we'll just drop everybody, or we'll drop everybody who can beat Lotte Kopecky in a sprint. You don't have that situation anymore then, which would make it highly entertaining for us viewers, and I definitely hope that's the case. She won. It looked good. Kopecky says she will improve a few percentage points. I wonder what will happen with Vos. I think next week in Strade Bianche we'll get another idea. It's a race that's maybe a bit too much climbing for her, but we'll see. Another rider that was in that front group, cyclocross rider, was Van Anrooy Issam. I have to say, I was impressed by her. She was injured in the cross season, barely was able to do any cross racing due to that. She broke her rib in a crash on training, very unfortunate crash in the sand, hit her stem when she crashed. It took some while to recover from that. She had back issues due to that as well. She was very, very insecure starting the season, didn't really know what to expect, had a bunch of pain when she was walking, when she was riding, but it went well. She was up there. I was surprised to not only see her up there, but especially on the Muur van Gerardsbergen to see her follow. She just about hung on to Kopecky and Vos there. She got slightly dropped on the Bosberg, but managed to come back. She was up there with Elisa Longo-Borghini, her teammate. They rolled attacks. I mean, the outcome, not really that relevant. She was 4th. They tried what they could at Little Trek. But for me, it's more about the performance, that she was up there. Cobbled climb, not really the speciality of Van Anrooy. We know she can do it, but I think she's even better in the paved climbs, like we will see in Liège. But yeah, it looked very, very good.
It looked great, to be honest. And big engine, eh? It's insane, to be honest, how someone can get herself through such a pain barrier in a way. It was great to see how she was able to manifest herself at the front, and also the way Little Trek tried to play the tactics. It was not the most perfect way of playing it out, but they definitely gave it a shot, and it looked quite good. And it's with the way her cyclocross season went, I have to say that I was a little bit in doubt how it would play out on the road, to be honest. Not that I thought that it would go completely wrong or something, but I didn't know if Omloop was going to be a little bit too soon, but apparently it wasn't. And, you said Kopecky was talking about that there is still some percentages that can be added. That is for most of the riders. They're all going to be a little bit better in the next, most of them at least, in the next couple of weeks. So that is also going to be the case for Van Anrooy most likely. And I feel that, as you said, the paved climbs is for her maybe a little bit better, but the way she was riding in Omloop, I think that there is definitely also some potential on the cobble climbs, and I think that there is, on a good day, you never know what you can do with the tactics. If Longo-Borghini is also going to be up there and they can play something out, who knows? But very promising the way she was racing there up the front, and great to see her up there.
The difficulty in that group was that Little Trek had the 2 slowest riders and also the 2 weakest riders. So Vos and Kopecky had more in the tank, and well, it was maybe a bit weird that Van Anrooy and Longo-Borghini took turns for like 2 kilometers. I think that was due to the fact that there's no radio communication between Bosberg and Muur, because the cars take a deviation. And what they didn't know was that Wiebes was not in the group behind. I think they thought, we just saw the group behind us, they're not too far back. and Wiebes is in there. So if we want any chance of victory, we need to have a lead big enough, because they're just going to wait for Wiebes to come back, because Kopecky had worked for Wiebes before. Nevertheless, in that group, there was no Wiebes. There was Puk Pieterse. She's doing her second season of road racing, this year doing a bit more races than last year. She also made a good impression to me. Issam on the Muur, okay, she got dropped. Again, for Pieterse, the same as for Van Andel, I don't think cobbled climbs are really, really her thing. Obviously, she won't be horrible at it, but not the best thing she shines in. It looked good. She was up there, but also signs of inexperience, especially leading up to the finale, the Muur van Gerardsbergen and the Bosberg. Doing a bit too much work in that group with SD Works, but I guess that's also why she's doing these races, so she can gain some experience for when she really takes road serious.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some will be, how can you say that? A little bit...
questionable.
Well, I mean, not questionable, but there are some riders that would have, that would do less races and still be able to somewhat, be just that little bit more trying to not take a turn left or right and not be at the front most of the time. It's not something to do with being smarter, but just like in the race, making sure that you conserve a little bit more towards the end. And I feel... especially, what is it? I think the section between Berendries and the Muur, the way she was racing there was interesting, I would say. And also between Bosberg and Muur, it was a lot of energy being spent there. And it was interesting, but super strong. And as you said, it's definitely not her strongest part, being the coupled climbs, but she held her own quite well, in my opinion. And I feel that if she, does a little more racing, and they have, the staff there at Phoenix de Koning, they will definitely tell her a little bit to calm down during the races and make sure that you try to let other riders also take initiative, because eventually that is sometimes, it's the little margins that could get you a position or two ahead in the standings, just by being that tiny bit more conservative with your energy and not taking that many turns could really help and save the day. So I feel that the way she raced it in Omloop, for someone that maybe doesn't even take the road that serious, it was a great opening season race for her in a way. And with Strade coming up, which is something that suits her a little bit better, it's going to be interesting to see what she can do there.
Yeah, I look forward to Strade. It should be good. A few more cyclocross riders in the women's race. We had Silvia Persico leading the UAE team. I think there were a couple of big crashes. She was behind one of them. I don't remember which one, and that was game over for her. And I mean, I do have to say this. Talita de Jong, 5th place, former cyclocross world champion, hasn't done cross in a while, had a very, very, very rough patch after that. Man, what a ride. 5th place there. She says it's not even close to her peak form at the moment or the type of race where she wants to excel. It's just a wonderful story. It's so nice, I just couldn't not tell it, because she had that rough patch after that world title. She hopped from team to team. Experza didn't go well. Did she get... No, she wasn't the one that got fired there. That was Ribeiro or Bakker. But anyway, things didn't go well. And then she rebuilt herself. And then she got in Live Racing in 2022. Made progression. Was pretty good last year. This is definitely a step up again. But Live merged with Jayco. And she didn't get picked to make the merger team. And now she's racing for Continental, Lotto Destiny, really a team without any presence in women's cycling. I mean, they have Katelijne de Klerk, but it's not the team they are on the men's side. The women's team is a Continental team. It's really a small team. You hardly see them. And then for the young to go there and perform, it's just a fairy tale story. And I wanted to mention that before we went to talk about the men's side. Van der Poel has announced he's starting his season in Milaan-San Remo. We'll talk about that some other time, because apparently this guy Van Aert won Kuurne Brussels Kuurne today. He's yet to go on altitude camp, was 3rd in Omloop with Nieuwsblad. Pretty good start for Van Aert, who of course with Visma Lease a Bike has been dominating the opening weekend. Tratnik winning yesterday, 1-3. There were 3 men in a leading group of 6 today. Van Aert just dictated. Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne took the win. Laporte sprints to 4th. It's too easy for that team.
Yeah, but not the way I expected it in a way, and I feel that in the end for sure they dominated and did their thing and played around with the other riders, but especially if you look at Omloop, that is a race that could have ended a little bit differently, but eventually there was Tratnik, and there was a great news bullet that wanted to help him out there, and that was how that went. And Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, it was almost as if Van Aert heard that there were some people doubting him when he was when he was dropped by Skuins at the Omloop, and wanted to show himself that he is definitely one of the better, if not the best rider, definitely currently with that field that was racing there in Kuurne. And the way he raced that was just a display of power, and we know that he is capable of doing that. And it's just now it's going to be the question: is he going to be able to do that at the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders? That is what's going to matter. But for now, it looks quite good, and he's going to do his attitude training, I guess, and then next race for him is going to be E3 Harelbeke.
Yeah, that's whatever that race is called. It's changed name a bunch of times, but yeah, the E3-prijs is what it will be. And I think that attack from Skuins was super important in Omloop, because yes, there were moments that Visma could have lost that race, but numerically they were able to play their advantage for a large part. But then when Skuins dropped that nuclear attack, all of a sudden they were like, whoa, wait, Van Aert couldn't close this? What's going on here? Are we actually sure we can wait until the Muur, or are we just going to be dropped by Skuins and look like fools? So then they needed to play their numbers, and the cooperation was gone, and for Jorgensen doing a 30-ish K solo was too much of an ask, because he'd done a lot of work before. So that definitely played a role in allowing the peloton to come back from such a position. But collectively the team is strong as ever, and today in Kuurne there was no doubt as well. From 20-man group they were there with 6 riders. From a 10-man group they were there with 5 riders or something like that before Van Aert went. They were really, really up there, and as you said, Van Aert today in Kuurne just too good. He decided who would be allowed to follow him. He chose Tim Wellens, who I believe is pretty good friends with Van Aert, and Lascano, who's a workhorse. So yeah, it's looking good, and of course it's going to be about the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix for him. That's the type of rider he is. He's put that pressure on himself as well, and then I don't mean that pressure by skipping the Cyclocross Worlds. He's put that pressure on himself by saying those are the 2 races he wants to win, and we'll see what it comes from this year. But obviously Van Aert, he is a great rider, so we'll see what comes from it. Pidcock also raced Omloop. This is his only cobbled classic of the season. He was up there in the group with Van Aert, Laporte, Skuins, De Lee was there. Probably forgetting a name, but they were up there. Yeah, I'm forgetting Jorgensen. Those 6 leaders. Pidcock was there, but got dropped. It wasn't really his day, but it's also fine that it wasn't his day. He showed some form in Algarve earlier, where Van Aert won a stage. But for Pidcock, the goals are further down the road. This season, he's definitely choosing what he wants to do. He's not going to try the Flemish and Ardennes. He's going all in on the Ardennes, which I think is a wise decision. He's just not good enough on the cobbled climbs, and that's a weakness he can fix in the future, but good that he doesn't try to do that in a season where he also wants to become Olympic champion mountain biking. We'll talk about the mountain bike a bit more, also about the plans of Pieterse. We went over it in our pre-podcast discussion that we don't think she's going to do the World Cups in Brazil, but we'll come to that down the road, maybe after Strade, because this podcast is getting pretty long. Would like to mention 2 more riders. Joseph Blackmore, raced in Tour de Rwanda, took the win there. Former cyclocross rider. I think it's a shame he's focusing on the road now. Obviously, it's not unjustified. He's on the Israel development team, won that stage race there ahead of a couple of other talents. Can't blame him for that, but it's obviously annoying and a shame for the sport to see riders like Blackmore, and in that regard also Ben Turner, shifting away from cross completely to focus on the road and not trying to combine it, which, I mean, in the way cross is formed at the moment, it makes sense, but this is just something that will need to be tackled in the future if they want to give the sport a more international look. I think with that we can end it, Issam. I hope we didn't forget anything. I tried to cover everything as best as possible this weekend, but I also had a bit of work to do this morning, so my apologies if I missed anything, but thank you for being here, and hopefully you'll get rid of the remainders of your illness this week.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I hope that it clears up. I think it's already on a very good way, so the health is getting better and better. But thank you for having me, and I think we definitely did our best to cover everything that we could. And I think next week or next weekend, Strade Bianche.
Yeah, definitely 50 podcasts this season for 50 cyclocross weekends. Well, not really weekends, but races, interviews, and the whole micmac. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week for Strade Bianche, and then normally after that at some point we just disappear for a while and occasionally come back. But this year, for real, I'm gonna try and be more reliable in updating the podcast during the off season, which normally also gets me doing a bunch of other things. But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for the support this season, and we will be back soon. Goodbye.